Lieutenant Commander Eliza Chen rubbed her tired eyes as she monitored the communication systems aboard the Europa station. The United Earth Defense Force outpost orbited Jupiter's icy moon, serving as humanity's early warning system for threats from deep space. 3 hours into her night shift, the quiet hum of the equipment kept her company as stars glittered through the viewport. The console suddenly lit up with a series of urgent beeps. "What the hell?" Chen muttered, her fingers flying, across the holographic interface. The signal was faint but distinct, coming from somewhere in the Andromeda galaxy. "Computer, run translation matrix," she ordered. The translation took several minutes, the computer comparing the signal against known alien languages. Finally, the message appeared on screen. "Under attack. Require immediate assistance. Send military support." Chen's heart raced. The message came from the Zelnar, a peaceful spacefaring species Earth had met only 18 months ago. The Zelnar had welcomed humans into the Galactic Concord, an alliance of 17 different alien civilizations. "Computer, verify signal. Origin and authenticate," Chen commanded. "Signal authenticated. Origin, Zelnar Colony World Velnarix." Chen hit the emergency alert button. Within minutes, the station commander appeared on the bridge, his uniform hastily donned. "Report, Lieutenant Commander." "Sir, we've received a distress call from the Zelnar colony on Velnarix. They're requesting military support." Commander Jackson frowned. "Forward this to Earth Command immediately. Wake up Admiral Torres." Admiral William Torres was not a man who appreciated being woken at 0300 hours. But as the head of Earth's Defense Force, he understood that threats didn't follow convenient schedules. He strode into the Emergency Operations Center beneath Geneva, where the 12 members of the Defense Council were gathering, some in person and others as holographic projections. "What do we know?" Torres asked, accepting a cup of coffee from his aide. General Maya Rodriguez, head of intelligence, stood. "Sir, at 0217 hours, Europa Station received a distress signal from the Zelnar colony on Velnarix. They report being under attack and have requested military support." Torres studied the star map projected in the center of the room. "Distance to Velnarix?" 3 weeks at maximum FTL speed, sir," Rodriguez replied. General Katri, the xenocultural specialist, cleared her throat. "Admiral, there's something important to consider here. For the Zelnar, requesting military support is essentially a declaration of war. They're asking allies to join their conflict. Their culture views this as a last resort diplomatic option." Torres raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "The Zelnar evolved on a world with minimal predators or natural disasters. Their society developed through cooperation, not competition," Katri said. "They don't understand that for species like us, Deathworlders from high-gravity, high-danger planets, a cry for help triggers an immediate protective response." "Are you suggesting we shouldn't help them?" asked Commander Park from the Tactical Division. Katri shook her head. "No, I'm explaining that the Zelnar likely expect us to begin diplomatic communications first. They don't expect us to actually send a combat fleet." Torres considered this information as he walked slowly around the star map. Earth had only recently joined the Galactic Concord. Most alien species had been surprised to learn humans evolved on what they classified as a Class 12 death world, a high planet with extreme weather, dangerous wildlife, active tectonics, and countless pathogens. Very few spacefaring species came from such harsh environments. "What intelligence do we have on potential attackers?" Torres asked. "Limited, sir," Rodriguez replied. "The Zelnar message didn't identify their attackers. Based on recent reports from that sector, it could be the VK Thrax, an expansionist species that's been pushing into conquered territory." Admiral Torres turned to the logistics officer. "Status of the 5th Fleet?" "Fully operational, sir. Carrier group is docked at Luna Base with full complement." Torres nodded slowly, his decision crystallizing. "Prepare the 5th Fleet for immediate deployment to Velnarix. Full combat configuration." A murmur ran through the room. Commander Park spoke up. "Sir, Concord protocols suggest we should consult with the Alliance before deploying military forces." Torres turned to the commander with steel in his eyes. "The Zelnar are under attack. They've asked for help." Where I come from, that means we help first and talk politics later. Sir, General Khatri interjected, the conquered species aren't used to how humanity responds to threats. They evolved in safer environments. They don't understand our intensity. Torres smiled grimly. Then this will be educational for everyone involved. He turned to his communications officer. Send word to the Concord that we've received a distress call from our allies, the Zelnar, and we're responding with appropriate measures. Should we specify that we're sending a full combat fleet? The officer asked. No need. They'll find out. Soon enough. Torres gazed at the holographic display of Earth's most powerful warships. Have the Fifth Fleet ready to depart in 6 hours. I want the advance reconnaissance team to launch immediately. As the officers hurried to carry out his orders, Admiral Torres walked to the viewport overlooking Lake Geneva. Dawn was breaking over the mountains, the first rays of sunlight glinting off the snow-capped peaks. Captain Rodriguez, he called, to the young officer who would lead the advance team. Sir, she responded, stepping forward. The Zelnar don't understand what they've just asked for, Torres said quietly. They've never seen Deathworlders go to war. Make sure our response is instructive. Rodriguez nodded. Yes, sir. Within an hour, the UES Indomitable, Earth's fastest scout cruiser, broke orbit and accelerated toward the edge of the solar system. Its FTL drives engaged with a flash of light, bending space around the vessel as it leapt toward distant stars. 2. Zelnar had sent an SOS, not understanding that to humans those 3 letters carried the weight of ancient maritime law, a sacred obligation to respond with all available force. Whoever was attacking the Zelnar colony was about to learn why. The rest of the galaxy called humans Deathworlders. It wasn't just because Earth tried to kill humans every day. It was because humans had learned to fight back and win. The Fifth Fleet, 27 warships and their support vessels prepared to follow. Admiral Torres watched from the bridge of the UES Everest as Earth fell away beneath them. Helm, set course for Velnarix, he ordered. Maximum speed. The Zelnar had asked for help, and the Deathworlders were coming. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, her eyes fixed on the main view screen. After 3 weeks at maximum FTL speed, her scout cruiser had finally reached the Zelnar colony world of Velnarix. What they found made her blood run cold. Tactical assessment, she ordered, her voice steady despite the scene before them. Lieutenant Nasir, her tactical officer, studied his console. Multiple impact sites across the northern continent, Captain. The main settlement has been partially destroyed. Orbital infrastructure is damaged but still functional. Life signs? Rodriguez asked. Scattered Zelnar readings in the northern hemisphere, Nasir replied. And something else. Hundreds of unknown biosignatures converging on the main settlement. Rodriguez recognized the pattern immediately. They're using siege tactics, driving the survivors toward the central hub before launching a final assault. She had studied Earth's military history extensively. This was a strategy as old as warfare itself. Captain, called her communications officer, we're receiving transmissions from the surface, 2 different sources. On screen, Rodriguez ordered. The view screen split to show 2 images. On the left was a Zelnar, its blue skin pale with stress, 4 eyes blinking rapidly. On the right was a creature Rodriguez had never seen before, tall and insectoid, with gleaming black exoskeleton and clicking mandibles. The Zelnar spoke first, its translator converting its musical language into English. Earth vessel, this is Administrator Velcorax. Our colony is under attack. We did not expect such a rapid response to our message. Before Rodriguez could reply, the insectoid creature cut in. Human vessel. This is Commander Kretix of the VK Thrax Expansion Force. This is a regional dispute between our people and the Zelnar. It does not concern Earth or the conquered. Depart immediately, or be considered hostile. Rodriguez kept her face neutral as she studied the VK Thrax commander. Earth intelligence had been right about who was attacking the colony. This is Captain Maya Rodriguez of the United Earth Defense Force vessel Indomitable, she replied calmly. We are responding to a distress call from our allies. Administrator Vel Korax, what is your situation? The Zelnar's 4 hands moved in agitation. The VK Thrax attacked without warning 7 days ago. They've destroyed our defense systems and communications array. They're hunting down our people. The VK Thrax commander's mandibles clicked angrily. The Zelnar encroached on territory claimed by the VK Thrax expansion. This is a matter of territorial sovereignty. Rodriguez nodded thoughtfully. I understand. Commander Kritix, please hold while I consult with my superiors. She signaled her communications officer to mute the transmission, then turned to her bridge crew. Tactical, what are we facing? Lieutenant Nasir worked his console quickly. Sensors show approximately 2,000 VK Thrax ground forces and 3 cruiser-class vessels in orbit on the far side of the planet. Their technology appears to be roughly equivalent to our own. Weapons and shields at full capacity, reported her weapons officer. Tactical squadrons ready for deployment. Rodriguez made her decision. Communications transmit our response to the VK Thrax. The link reopened, showing the insectoid commander waiting impatiently. Commander Kritix, Rodriguez said formally, the United Earth Defense Force acknowledges your message. The VK Thrax seemed to relax slightly, its posture becoming less aggressive. Rodriguez continued, however, we are bound by alliance obligations to respond to the Zelnar distress call. Her voice hardened. You have 1 hour to cease all hostilities and withdraw your forces from this planet. After that, we will take appropriate action. The VK Thrax commander's mandibles spread wide in what might have been disbelief or amusement. A single Earth vessel threatens the VK Thrax expansion? Your species is either very brave or very foolish. Rodriguez allowed herself a small smile. We're often both. 1 hour, Commander. Rodriguez out. As the screen went dark, she turned to her crew. They won't withdraw. Prepare for combat operations. Lieutenant Nasir, launch all tactical squadrons. Lieutenant Parker, prepare ground teams. For deployment, priority is securing these Zelnar survivors. Her officers moved with practiced efficiency, the product of countless drills and simulations. Within minutes, 12 fighter craft launched from the Indomitable's bays, streaking toward the planet's atmosphere. The VK Thrax vessels are moving. To intercept, Nasir reported. Let them come, Rodriguez replied. Execute Operation Thunderbolt. The human fighters suddenly split into 3 groups, using the planet's magnetic field to mask their signatures. While the VK Thrax tracked the most visible group, the other 2 squadrons slipped past their defenses. On her tactical display, Rodriguez watched as her fighters targeted the VK Thrax ground positions with surgical precision. The first strikes hit command centers and weapons depots, taking out the VK Thrax leadership and heavy weapons in coordinated strikes. Ground teams away, reported Lieutenant Parker. Rodriguez nodded. 4 dropships had detached from the Indomitable, carrying Earth Special Forces. Unlike the aerial assault which was meant to be seen, the ground teams inserted covertly, using the chaos of the airstrikes as cover. The VK Thrax had never encountered humans before. They had conquered 3 systems through intimidation and superior numbers, easily overwhelming peaceful species who surrendered rather than face prolonged conflict. They weren't prepared for Deathworlders who evolved on a planet where every day was a fight for survival. Captain, called Lieutenant Nasir, VK Thrax cruisers are moving to attack position. Hold our position, Rodriguez ordered. Let them come to us. The first VK Thrax cruiser fired, its energy weapons flashing across space toward the Indomitable. The human vessel's shields flared but held. Return fire, Rodriguez commanded. Target their propulsion systems. The Indomitable's main cannons fired, the energy beams striking the VK Thrax vessel with pinpoint accuracy. The alien ship listed to one side as its engines failed. The other cruisers are pulling back, Nasir reported with surprise. Rodriguez nodded. They expected us to either run or die. They didn't expect us to fight effectively. She turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to Admiral Torres. The Admiral's face appeared on screen. The main fleet was still 2 days out. Captain Rodriguez, report, Torres ordered. Sir, we've engaged the VK Thrax forces at Velnarix. Airstrikes have disabled their primary ground capabilities. Special forces are securing Zelnar survivors. We've disabled one enemy cruiser, and the others have withdrawn to regroup. Torres nodded with approval. Casualties? None so far, sir. The Vikithrax weren't prepared for our tactics. Well done, Captain. Hold your position until the fleet arrives. Continue rescue operations. Yes, sir. Rodriguez hesitated. Admiral, the Vikithrax seemed genuinely surprised that we responded militarily to the Zelnar distress call. I don't think they understand how humans operate. Torres smiled grimly. They're learning, Captain. The rest of the fleet arrives in 48 hours. By then, I expect the Vikithrax will understand exactly what it means when Deathworlders answer a call for help. As night fell on Velnarix, the Zelnar survivors gathered in the secure zone established by Earth's forces. They watched in wonder as the humans moved with a speed and purpose they had never witnessed before. Administrator Velcorax approached Captain Rodriguez, who was reviewing tactical displays at the forward command post. Captain, the Zelnar said, quietly. When we sent our message, we expected diplomatic intervention, perhaps sanctions against the Vikithrax. We did not expect this. Rodriguez looked up from her work. On Earth, Administrator, when someone calls for help, we help. It's that simple. The Vikithrax will return with reinforcements, Velcorax warned. Rodriguez nodded. We're counting on it. The rest of our fleet arrives tomorrow. She pointed to the tactical display showing the approaching Earth vessels. What you've seen today was just our advance team. We've only just begun. The Zelnar's 4 eyes widened in understanding. They had called for help from Deathworlders, not realizing what they had unleashed, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Verdant Nebula was quiet now. Where once a fierce battle had raged, there was only the slow dance of gas clouds and scattered debris. Repair vessels moved carefully through the battlefield, recovering damaged ships and searching for survivors. Both human and Vrex aboard the hospital ship UN Mercy, medical teams worked tirelessly. The large vessel had been designed to handle mass casualties, but no one had expected to be treating aliens from 3 different species. Human doctors and nurses moved quickly between patients, adapting their techniques for different biologies. In one of the recovery wards, Commander Elena Reyes lay in a medical bed, her right arm and shoulder wrapped in regenerative bandages. The Defiant had been badly damaged in the battle, and Elena had suffered injuries when a console exploded during their escape. She was lucky to be alive. You should be resting, said a familiar voice. Elena looked up to see Science Director Televan entering the room. The tall Jaxiri moved with the careful precision of someone still adjusting to human standard gravity. I could say the same to you, Elena replied with a small smile. How is your daughter? Neri is fully recovered thanks to Dr. Nakamura. Televan's large eyes showed an emotion that Elena couldn't quite identify. The doctor himself is still undergoing treatment for the effects of the procedure, but he is expected to make a full recovery as well. Elena nodded. It was typical of Nakamura to downplay the risks he had taken to save the Jaxiri child. And the rest of your people? Adapting. Many are still processing what happened. Televan moved closer to Elena's bed. High Counselor Varanzol has requested a full report on our interactions with humans during this crisis. I imagine that will be an interesting report to write. Indeed. The Jaxiri scientist was quiet for a moment. I have had to reconsider many of my beliefs about your species, Commander Reyes. We called you violent, yet you showed remarkable restraint in battle. We called you primitive, yet your engineers adapted your ships for our comfort without hesitation. We feared your unpredictability, yet it was precisely this quality that saved us all. Before Elena could respond, the door opened again to admit Admiral Zhang and High Counselor Varanzol. Elena attempted to sit up straighter, but Zhang waved, her back down. At ease, Commander, this isn't a formal inspection. The Admiral's stern face softened slightly. The doctors tell me you'll be back on your feet in a few days. Yes, sir. Deathworlder biology has its advantages. High Counselor Varanzol studied Elena with undisguised curiosity. Indeed it does. Your capacity for healing is remarkable. The tall Jaxiri diplomat was clearly uncomfortable in the human medical facility, but he maintained his dignified bearing. "I've been reviewing the battle records and the reports from Director Televan," Varanzol continued. "The Confederation Council has called an emergency session to discuss the Vrex threat and other matters." "Other matters?" Elena questioned. Admiral Jang answered. "The Council is reconsidering certain policies regarding Earth's role in Confederation defense. This incident has forced many of us to reevaluate our assumptions about Deathworlders," Varanzol admitted. "While your species evolved in conditions of constant danger, you did not become mere predators. Instead, you developed cooperation, self-sacrifice, and protection of others as survival strategies." Elena thought of her crew, of Dr. Nakamura risking his health for an alien child of Exo Quan, positioning the resilience to shield the damaged defiant. "That's what humans do," she said simply. "We protect those who need protection." 2 weeks later, Elena stood in her dress uniform aboard the Confederation diplomatic vessel Harmonious Accord. The ship's Grand Council chamber was filled with representatives from dozens of species, including a large delegation from Earth. The room had been designed to accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and environmental needs, with adaptive, gravity and atmosphere controls for each section. At the center of the chamber, Admiral Jang stood beside High Counselor Varanzol and several other Confederation officials. What had been planned as a simple commendation ceremony had evolved into something much more significant. "Commander Elena Reyes," Varanzol's voice carried throughout the chamber. "Please step forward." Elena moved to the center of the chamber, conscious of the hundreds of eyes, of many different shapes and colors, watching her. "The Confederation Council has reviewed the events at the Verdant Nebula," Varanzol began formally. "Your actions, while initially in violation of Confederation protocols regarding Deathworlder military activity, have been recognized as both necessary and commendable." The Jaxiri counselor turned to address the entire assembly. "For too long, the Confederation has viewed species from high-gravity, high-danger worlds with fear and suspicion. We created rules to contain them rather than understand them. The Battle of Verdant Nebula has shown us the error in this thinking." Science Director Televan stepped forward, her silver-blue skin gleaming under the chamber's lights. "As the senior Jaxiri scientist involved in these events, I wish to formally acknowledge that my previous position regarding humans was incorrect." Her voice was clear and unwavering. "I had judged an entire species based on the conditions of their evolution, not on their actions or character." Elena noticed that Televan's daughter Neri stood nearby, watching with wide, curious eyes. The child no longer showed fear of humans, only interest. Admiral Zhang spoke next. "On behalf of Earth and the United Earth Navy, we accept this recognition. Humanity joined the Confederation, hoping to be partners in peace and, when necessary, in defense of that peace." High Counselor Varanzol raised his hands in a traditional Jaxiri gesture of respect. "The Confederation Council announces the following changes in policy. First, humanity will no longer be restricted from providing military assistance when requested. Second, a joint human Jaxiri research initiative will be established to study the ancient beacon technology for peaceful applications." The council chamber filled with the sounds of approval from many species. Elena caught sight of Ambassador Krill, who gave her a small nod of acknowledgement. After the ceremony, Elena found herself on the observation deck of the newly commissioned UEN cooperation, watching the stars. Earth's fleet was preparing to return home, their mission complete. The Vrex threat had been neutralized, though not eliminated entirely. Several of their vessels had escaped, and the Confederation now recognized them as a serious danger that would require ongoing vigilance. Elena heard soft footsteps behind her and turned to see Televan approaching. The Jaxiri scientist had volunteered to become Earth's first resident diplomat from her species. "Your people answered our call when you had every reason not to," Televan observed, coming to stand beside Elena at the viewport. "That's what humans do," Elena replied simply. "We evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day. We learned early that survival depends on helping each other. The Confederation has always feared what Deathworlders might become if unleashed. Among the stars, Televan admitted. Elena smiled, looking at the fleet assembling for their journey home. Multiple ships from different species now flew alongside the human vessels, the beginning of a true Confederation defense force. Tell them not to worry, she said. We don't rescue because we're Deathworlders, we rescue because we're human. The gentle hum of the ship was interrupted by a communication alert. Elena tapped her badge. Rhea's here. Commander, came the voice of Admiral Zhang. We've received a distress call from a mining colony in the Tellus sector. Unusual seismic activity threatening their main habitat dome. Elena and Televan exchanged glances. Coordinates received, Admiral, Elena replied. The cooperation can be there in 16 hours at maximum speed. Very good, Commander. Rescue operations are authorized. As the communication ended, Televan tilted her head curiously. Another rescue mission so soon? Elena was already moving toward the bridge, purpose in her stride. Like I said, Director, that's what humans do. Behind them, through the viewport, the stars seemed to make way as the UEN cooperation changed course, heading once more toward those in need. The end. Lieutenant Sarah Way stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, one of the smaller destroyers in Admiral Torres's fleet. 4 days had passed since the diplomatic meeting, and everyone knew what was coming. Contact, called out the sensor officer. Multiple FTL signatures detected at the edge of the system. Way tapped her console, bringing up the tactical display. How many? Over 200 vessels, Lieutenant. The VK Thrax reinforcements have arrived. Way's face remained calm despite the odds. The Earth fleet had 27 ships against the VK Thrax's 200, but Admiral Torres had spent those 4 days preparing. All hands to battle stations, Way ordered. Prepare to execute Operation Thermopylae. Across the fleet, similar orders rang out. Earth's vessels moved into their assigned positions, not in a unified defensive line as traditional tactics would suggest, but in small, scattered battle groups. From the bridge of the UES Everest, Admiral Torres watched the VK Thrax fleet emerge. From FTL travel, the enemy ships formed a massive arrow formation, clearly intending to punch straight through Earth's defenses. They've committed their full regional force, Torres observed. Exactly as we anticipated. Commander Chen nodded. They outnumber us nearly 8-1, sir. Numbers aren't everything, Commander. Torres turned to his communications officer. Send the signal to begin Operation Thermopylae. What the VK Thrax didn't know was that humans had spent centuries preparing for exactly this kind of asymmetric warfare. Earth's violent history had taught humanity countless lessons about fighting superior numbers. As the VK Thrax fleet advanced, they suddenly encountered chaos. Quantum mines, deployed during the diplomatic talks, activated throughout their formation. The explosive devices didn't destroy many ships, but they disrupted the VK Thrax's careful formation, forcing their vessels to scatter. Phase 2, Torres ordered. Earth's ships began executing combat patterns that seemed suicidal to outside observers. Instead of maintaining distance, they charged directly into the confused VK Thrax formation, targeting communications arrays and command ships. On the UES Defiant, Lieutenant Way felt her ship shudder as enemy fire struck their shields. Shield strength at 40%, reported her damage control officer. Continue on course, Way ordered. Her destroyer was leading a strike team of 3 vessels targeting one of the VK Thrax command ships. Another hit rocked the bridge. Warning lights flashed across Way's console. Engine 3 is down, the engineer called out. We're losing maneuverability. Way made a split-second decision. All power to forward shields and engines 1 and 2. Continue on attack vector. Her crew looked at her with wide eyes but followed orders. The Defiant surged forward, directly toward the massive VK Thrax command ship. Lieutenant, her tactical officer said quietly. At this speed and trajectory, I know, Way replied calmly. Send the crew to escape pods. Skeleton crew remains on the bridge. As most of her crew evacuated, Way guided the crippled destroyer toward its target. The VK Thrax ship tried to evade, but Way had anticipated their Maneuver. She adjusted course, her hands steady on the controls. Impact in 30 seconds, announced the computer. Way opened a channel to Admiral Torres. Defiant to Everest. Executing final strike. It's been an honor, sir. Torres's voice came back clearly. The honor is ours, Lieutenant. Earth will remember. The crippled destroyer slammed into the VK Thrax command ship at near relativistic speed. The resulting explosion tore through the enemy vessel's command center, creating a chain reaction that disabled 3 nearby ships. On the planet's surface, the battle took a different form. The VK Thrax ground forces expected to face a standard defensive perimeter around the Zelnar settlements. Instead, they encountered an entirely different style of warfare. Captain James Chen led Earth's special forces through the dense forests of Velnarix. His team had spent the past days preparing the battlefield, setting booby traps, creating ambush zones, and mapping every inch of the terrain. They're approaching from the south, his scout reported. At least 500 troops. Chen nodded, his face painted with camouflage that matched the blue-green foliage. Spring the first trap. When the VK Thrax force entered the valley, they found it empty. No human defenders, no Zelnar civilians. Just as their commander signaled them forward, the ground beneath their feet collapsed. Pre-dug pits filled with quick-hardening foam trapped the front line of VK Thrax soldiers. As the aliens tried to help their trapped comrades, Chen's forces opened fire from hidden positions, in the trees and rocks, not with the intent to kill, but to create confusion and fear. The VK Thrax commander ordered a retreat, only to find the path behind them blocked by fallen trees and more traps. Every escape route led to another ambush. This isn't how the conquered species fight, a VK Thrax officer clicked in frustration. They form defensive lines, they protect fixed positions. Humans aren't like other conquered species, Chen whispered to his team as they moved to their next ambush position. We don't just defend, we hunt. By nightfall, the VK Thrax ground force had suffered over 70% casualties without ever making direct contact with the main human defensive positions. The few survivors retreated in disarray, their communication systems jammed by Earth's electronic warfare. In orbit, the battle reached its turning point. The VK Thrax's numerical advantage had been neutralized by Earth's unconventional tactics. Lieutenant Wei's sacrifice had destroyed their central command structure, leaving their fleet divided and confused. Admiral Torres stood on the Everest's bridge, watching the tactical display as the remaining VK Thrax vessels began to retreat. Should we pursue, sir? Asked Commander Chen. Torres considered for a moment. No, they've learned their lesson. Now it's time for diplomacy again. He turned to his communications officer. Open a channel to all remaining VK Thrax vessels. When the connection was established, Torres spoke clearly and firmly. This is Admiral William Torres of the United Earth Defense Force. Your attack has failed. Your ground forces are defeated. Your command structure is in chaos. He paused, letting his words sink in. This was your first encounter with humans. It can also be your last. The choice is yours. Withdraw from all Zelnar territories immediately, or we will continue this lesson in what happens when you threaten a species under human protection. The Zelnar watched in amazement as the VK Thrax fleet disengaged and jumped to FTL, retreating from the system. They had never witnessed such efficient combat operations nor such decisiveness. Ambassador Velthar approached Admiral Torres as he returned to the surface. The Zelnar's skin was now a deep blue of respect mixed with awe. Admiral, the alien, said quietly, my people have avoided conflict for thousands of years. We believed that violence could always be prevented through communication and understanding. Torres nodded. A noble belief, Ambassador. But today we learned that there are species in our galaxy who do not share this belief, Velthar continued. And we learned that sometimes protectors are needed. Torres looked across the landscape where Earth's soldiers were helping Zelnar rebuild their homes. Humanity fought itself for most of our history, Ambassador. We learned combat through necessity, not choice. The death world that shaped you, Velthar observed. Yes, but now we can use those skills to protect others. Torres smiled slightly. Perhaps that's why we evolved them in the first place. In the night sky above them, Earth's fleet maintained its protective formation, a shield of steel and determination between the Zelnar and any who would threaten them. The battle was won. But Torres knew this was just the beginning. The VK Thrax were merely pawns of the Nexus. A greater threat was coming, and the Deathworlders would be ready. Dr. Aisha Okafor stood in the makeshift laboratory set up in the Zelnar settlement. As Earth's leading xenobiologist, she had been sent to Vel Narix after the battle to study both the Zelnar and the VK Thrax. Around her, screens displayed DNA, sequences, biological scans, and cultural data recovered from the VK Thrax ships. Admiral Torres entered the lab, accompanied by Captain Rodriguez and the Zelnar ambassador Velthar. "You asked to see us, Doctor?" Okafor nodded, her face serious. "Yes, Admiral, I've discovered something concerning." She gestured to the main screen. "Initially, we believed the VK Thrax were acting independently in their conquest of this sector. That was incorrect." She tapped her tablet and new images appeared, complex biological structures that looked like neural networks. The VK Thrax nervous systems show signs of external modification. They have implants here at the base of their brainstems. Torres frowned. "Implants? For what purpose?" "Control," Okafor said simply. "The VK Thrax aren't merely territorial opportunists. They're client species of something called the Nexus." Rodriguez leaned forward. "We found references to the Nexus in their battle plans, but we assumed it was a military alliance." "It's much more than that," Okafor replied. "The Nexus is a hive mind collective that absorbs other species. Based on the data we've recovered, they've been systematically testing the Conquered's defenses using the VK Thrax as proxies. Probing for weaknesses," Torres muttered. "Exactly. The attack on the Zelnar was a test. The Nexus wanted to see how the Conquered would respond to aggression. They expected a diplomatic response, perhaps economic sanctions. Instead, they got us," Rodriguez said with a grim smile. Ambassador Velthar's 4 eyes blinked rapidly in distress. "You believe this Nexus plans to attack the Conquered directly?" Okafor nodded. "The data suggests they've been expanding for centuries, adding new species to their collective. They target peaceful, technologically advanced civilizations, exactly like the Conquered species." Torres studied the information on the screens. "How do they operate? What's their military doctrine?" "They overwhelming with numbers," Okafor explained. "They send waves of controlled client species first, wearing down resistance. Then the central Nexus entities arrive to complete the absorption." "And how long until they reach conquered space?" Torres asked. Okafor's expression darkened. "Based on their fleet movements? 3 months at most." The emergency session of the Galactic Concord Council took place virtually, with representatives from all 17 member species attending via holographic projection. Torres stood in the communication chamber aboard the Everest, facing the semicircle of alien diplomats. The Conquered High Minister, a tall, willowy being with silvery skin, addressed Torres directly. "Admiral, while we appreciate your defense of the Zelnar, your unilateral military action has violated numerous Concord protocols. Humanity was admitted provisionally, with the understanding that your species would temper its aggressive tendencies." Torres kept his expression neutral. "With respect, Minister, those aggressive tendencies just saved the Zelnar from extinction and uncovered a threat to the entire Conquered. The VK Thrax were counting on your diplomatic protocols to delay any meaningful response until it was too late." He activated a holographic display showing Dr. Okafor's findings. "The VK Thrax are controlled by a hive mind collective called the Nexus. They've been testing your defenses, looking for weaknesses, and they found one: your reliance on diplomacy even when facing an existential threat." Murmurs spread through the council as they reviewed the data. The Zelnar representative, surprising everyone, spoke in humanity's defense. "Esteemed colleagues," Ambassador Velthar began, "my people requested aid using terminology we now realize held different meanings. For humans, what we intended as a request for diplomatic intervention They interpreted as a call to immediate defense. The ambassador's skin flushed blue, indicating deep emotion. But had the humans followed Concord protocols, my colony would now be ashes and none of us would know about the Nexus threat. Torres activated another holographic display, showing the projected path of the approaching Nexus fleet. We have approximately 3 months before they arrive in force. The Concord has 2 options: continue to debate proper protocols while the threat approaches, or allow humanity to do what Deathworlders do best: protect our home and our allies by any means necessary. The council chamber fell silent as the Etium implications became clear. Back on Velnarix, Torres met with his senior officers to plan their next steps. The council had been shocked by the Nexus revelation, but remained divided on how to respond. "They're still debating," Torres said with frustration. "Some believe we should attempt diplomatic contact with the Nexus." Rodriguez shook her head. "After what we've seen of how they operate, that would be suicide." "I agree." Torres turned to Lieutenant Commander Patel. "What have you learned from the VK Thrax technology?" Patel brought up new schematics on the display. Their neural implants use quantum entanglement to maintain connection with the Nexus even across vast distances. That's how they coordinate their attacks so effectively. "Can we disrupt that connection?" Torres asked. Patel smiled slightly. "We're working on something, sir. A quantum resonance weapon that could theoretically sever the connections between the Nexus hive mind and its controlled species." Torres's eyes widened. "You mean we could free the client species from Nexus control?" "Potentially, yes. But we'd need resources and expertise beyond what we have here." Torres nodded decisively. "Send the specs to Earth immediately. I want our best scientists working on this." He turned to Dr. Okafor. "In the meantime, I need you to work with the Zelnar. Learn everything you can about how the conquered species think and operate. If we're going to defend them, we need to understand them." "And if the Council refuses our help?" Rodriguez asked quietly. Torres's expression hardened. "Then we prepare anyway. Earth isn't going to sit back and wait for invasion, even if the rest of the Concord chooses to." That evening, Torres stood with Ambassador Velthar on a hill overlooking the rebuilding Zelnar settlement. Below them, humans worked alongside the blue-skinned aliens, repairing homes and infrastructure damaged in the attack. "Your council remains uncertain about our methods," Torres observed. Velthar nodded. "Most conquered species evolved in environments that rewarded cooperation and harmony. Conflict resolution through discussion is hardwired into our biology. While Earth's harsh conditions shaped us differently," Torres said. "Predators don't stop to negotiate. Natural disasters don't respond to diplomacy." "Precisely. The Conquered has never faced a threat like the Nexus before, an enemy that won't be reasoned with." Velthar turned his 4 eyes toward Torres. "We need what humanity brings, Admiral. The will to fight when necessary, the instinct to protect, the experience of surviving against all odds." Torres watched as a human soldier showed a Zelnar child how to plant a sapling where a tree had been destroyed in the battle. Creation following, destruction, another human pattern. The Concord's peaceful species had forgotten what it meant to fight for survival, Velthar continued. "Humanity has not." Torres nodded slowly. "We'll prepare the Concord for what's coming, Ambassador, whether they want us to or not." In the distance, Earth's ships maintained their protective orbit around Velnarix, a steel shield against the darkness of space. But Torres knew the real challenge was still approaching, a hive mind that consumed entire civilizations, now aware of humanity's presence in the Concord. The Deathworlders had answered an SOS and discovered a war for the galaxy's future. And they would face it as they had faced every threat on their violent homeworld, with determination, ingenuity, and the fierce drive to protect not just themselves, but all who couldn't protect themselves. The message had gone out across human space. The Nexus is coming. Prepare for war. 3 months passed quickly. Admiral Torres stood on the bridge of the UES Everest, now the flagship of the largest combined fleet in conquered history. Through the viewport, he could see ships of 16 different designs, vessels from each conquered species, united under human leadership. "Status report," Torres called. Commander Chen approached with a tablet. "The Nexus fleet has been detected at the edge of the Arcturus system, sir. Long-range scans confirm over 500 vessels, mostly biomechanical in nature." Torres nodded, grimly. "And our forces?" 327 ships total, all positioned according to your strategy. The quantum resonance weapon is installed on the Everest and 5 other command vessels. "Are the Concorde ships following the battle plan?" Torres asked. Chen smiled slightly. "They're trying, sir. Some adapt better than others." In the 3 months since discovering the Nexus threat, Torres had transformed the Concorde's ceremonial defense fleet into a genuine fighting force. Each species contributed their unique strengths. The Zelnar provided their advanced sensor technology. The methane-breathing Havarash offered stealth field generators. The crystalline Tirvak reinforced human vessels with living armor. But at the core of this new coalition were the lessons of Earth, the only Class 12 death world in the Concord. Humanity taught their allies that survival sometimes required sacrifice, that victory often demanded risk, and that predators could be outthought as well as outfought. Not all conquered species had embraced these lessons. Some still believed negotiation was possible, even with a hive mind that consumed entire civilizations. "The Nexus fleet has accelerated," reported the sensor officer. "They'll reach the outer defense perimeter in 1 hour." Torres straightened his uniform. "Inform all ships. Battle stations." As the Nexus fleet approached, Torres opened a direct channel to its collective consciousness. The main view screen showed a strange, shifting image, part mechanical, part biological, constantly changing as if multiple creatures were fighting for control of a single body. "I am Admiral William Torres of the United Earth Defense Force, representing the Galactic Concord," he began. "We've studied your advanced forces and understand your nature. You've conquered hundreds of worlds by exploiting the same pattern. Test defenses with client species, identify weaknesses, then overwhelm with superior numbers." Torres let his words hang in the void for a moment before continuing. "That pattern works against species that evolved in stable environments. It fails against Deathworlders. Humans evolved on a planet that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. Our history is written in extinction events we survived. Our culture is forged in conflicts we overcame. We don't just adapt to threats, we consume them and grow stronger." The view screen showed the approaching Nexus fleet still advancing without response. "This is your one warning. The species you've conquered before surrendered, rather than face annihilation. Humans have a different calculation. We would rather burn alongside our enemies than live under their rule. And now we've taught that principle to every species in the Concord." Torres nodded to his communications officer, who transmitted the complete schematics of the quantum resonance weapon, a device capable of severing the connections between the Nexus hive mind, effectively lobotomizing their entire civilization. "You have 1 hour to begin your withdrawal from conquered space. After that, we deploy the resonance cascade. Your entire collective consciousness will fragment into billions of disconnected nodes. You won't die. You'll simply cease to exist as a unified entity." For 3 tense minutes there was no response. Then a strange, multi-layered voice emerged from the ship's speakers. "Interesting. You are different from the others. We have consumed thousands of species, but none like yours." The voice seemed to shift between multiple tones and accents. "Your threats are meaningless. Your weapon is theoretical. You cannot stop assimilation." Torres smiled grimly. "We're not just theoretical. We're Deathworlders. We turned theory into reality because our survival depended on it. But don't take my word for it. Ask the VK Thrax you sent against us." He nodded to Commander Chen, who activated a smaller quantum resonance pulse, one targeted specifically at the VK Thrax ships at the front of the Nexus fleet. On the view screen, the VK Thrax vessels suddenly broke formation, their movements becoming erratic as the neural link with the Nexus was temporarily disrupted. "That was a demonstration," Torres said to the Nexus. "A fraction of the weapon's full power. The next pulse will target your entire collective. Final warning: withdraw or face dissolution." For 10 tense minutes, the Nexus fleet maintained its course. Torres watched the countdown timer on his display, prepared to give the order to fire the main weapon. Then, without warning, the foremost Nexus vessels began to turn. "Sir," called the sensor officer in surprise. "The Nexus fleet is changing course. They're withdrawing." A cheer went up from the bridge crew, but Torres raised his hand for silence. "Maintain battle stations, track their course, make sure this isn't a deception." But it wasn't. One by one, the massive Nexus vessels turned away, disappearing into FTL jumps toward the Galactic rim. The Nexus voice spoke one final time before breaking connection. "We will remember this, humans. We have never encountered a species that made us reconsider. This is not over. It is merely postponed." Torres nodded to himself. He expected nothing less. The Nexus would return someday, perhaps with new tactics designed to counter humanity's approach. But by then, the Concorde would be better prepared. 1 month later, Torres stood in the grand chamber of the Galactic Concorde Council on their central world. Representatives from all 17 species were present, no longer as holograms, but in person. The High Minister approached Torres with a ceremonial object, a crystalline star that glowed with inner light. "Admiral Torres, in recognition of humanity's service to the Concorde, we present you with the Star of Unity," the minister said. "For thousands of years, the Concorde has valued peace above all else. We now recognize that true peace sometimes requires protectors." Torres accepted the star with a bow. Humanity is honored to serve that role. The Zelnar representative stepped forward. "We propose a new classification for humanity in the Conquered taxonomy. Not merely Deathworlders, but guardian species, evolved, in the crucible of adversity, uniquely suited to protect the peace that other species maintain." As applause filled the chamber, Torres thought about the strange path that had led to this moment. An SOS from a peaceful species misunderstood by humans who responded with immediate military force. A cultural misunderstanding that had ultimately saved the Conquered. Later, on the observation deck of the Everest, Torres watched as the combined fleet of 17 species conducted joint maneuvers preparing for threats yet to come. Captain Rodriguez joined him, looking out at the stars. "Humanity spent its history fighting itself," she observed. "Turns out we were just practicing for something bigger." Torres nodded. The Concorde species thought they were offering us membership as a kindness. They never realized they were recruiting their own defenders. "An SOS to Deathworlders doesn't just mean save our ship," Rodriguez said with a smile. "It means we bring everything we've got, fury, ingenuity, and that stubborn refusal to know when we're outmatched." In the vast darkness of space, Earth ships flew in formation with vessels of 16 other designs, an unlikely alliance forged in crisis and strengthened by difference. The Deathworlders had not just responded to an SOS, they had transformed it into a promise of protection, turning humanity's hard-won survival skills into the shield for a galaxy that had forgotten how to fight. The Nexus would return someday. But when they did, they would find not just humans waiting for them, but a united Conquered that had learned the most important lesson Deathworlders had to teach. Sometimes, peace must be protected by those who understand war, and the galaxy would never be the same again. End.